Ethereum ETFs are most definitely coming soon, but we still don't know the exact date, and we still have a wide range of predictions as to what that launch will look like and what we can expect in the weeks, months, even years afterwards. Of course, when we want to get the real skinny on ETFs, we go to the Bloomberg experts. I've got Eric Balchunas and James Seyffart both here today to discuss the Ethereum spot ETF. You guys don't want to miss this one. Let's go.
Let's go.
What is up, everybody? I'm Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of All Streets. Before we get started, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. The market bouncing a bit today. Bitcoin was trading actually over 59,000 just a few hours ago. Now trading right around 58,673. Ethereum seeing a little less of a bounce today, trading roughly flat. But nice to see at least that we are not living in a sea of red, which we have been of late. I still think this is just your classic bull market correction, nothing to worry about. But hey, I guess the market will either make me look like a genius or an idiot. It's only two ways. It's only two ways that it works. I've got, though, two of your favorite guests here today, and we're going to talk ETFs. I've got Eric and James, who both wore pink shirts. Why didn't I get the memo? It's ridiculous. I didn't know James had a pink shirt. He showed up late.
Honestly, his shirt does not look pink to me. I'm half colorblind. It looks pink? White.
No, it's pink. It's not as bright as Eric. It's not as bright as Eric's, but it's definitely a light pink shirt.
Yeah,
hey, James, I think we have you coming through your AirPods, by the way, and not your main mic. It's fine either way, but you're a bit quiet. But yes, you guys have different varieties of pink. I mean, I could probably change my lights to make my shirt look pinker, but I don't know. So, anyways, nobody wants to hear about our shirts. Let's talk about the Ethereum ETFs. They're coming. They didn't come on July 2nd. I guess in hindsight, Eric, that was kind of the odds-on prediction, but that would have been terrible for the market to have these launched on like a half trading day week with a holiday right in the middle, right? I wouldn't have been surprised if Gensler had done that, like July 3rd at 11:59 p.m. when the market closed. But we didn't get them yet. But as James tweeted here, the ETF filings are pouring in. I mean, this is happening. These S1s are all in now. Everybody's pretty much in line. James, I had to laugh when I looked at this that it's all alerts on ETF and then like a tin hat on Elon Musk and cancel culture at SpaceX.
When I'm not gonna lie, I was actually on a golf course when I posted this. So I looked at it. I was like, look at all these things, and I didn't even notice. I probably would have deleted that thing but it's just that's what my phone looked like. I was literally like doing a charity golf tournament. I had an off day, and I was like, oh my God, I got to tweet this out. This is crazy. My whole phone is nothing but the Ethereum S1 alerts.
Yeah. You've got to imagine it's a signal when all of these start pouring in at once, right? This was on Monday. But I mean, Eric, so July 2nd didn't happen. Here we are 8 days later. But do we have any significant dates? Somebody told me July 12th was kind of a drop dead date for something. Is that right or wrong?
No, I mean, look, the reason we said July 2nd, it was a good take because the way that the amount of edits the documents needed were so small in June that they could have easily done it. And this was the feeling that people in the know that was what they felt would happen. The idea was just to get it done before the holiday. Then you could just go on your holiday and have this off your plate if you're the SEC. Anyway, they're really taking their time. I don't know why. They might just be feeling lazy. There could be people out on vacation. I don't know. There's also a theory that there was one issuer that just didn't have their S1 quite up to speed, and theirs did need a lot of work, and they were slowing the pack down. I can't confirm what theory is true, but either way, the SEC took a little more time than they needed. So now we are waiting to find out from people in the know what the SEC is telling them. So I don't think the SEC has gotten back to the issuers yet, but when they do, they're going to give them a game plan, I think. They're going to say, okay, here's the plan. You guys are going to send back your documents. We're going to make them effective. And then you can launch on Thursday, July 18th, something like that. And that is my new ballpark. Although it's just totally an educated guess. If like a gun to head, if you asked me to pick a date, I would say July 18th, which would be a week from Thursday. But who knows? The good news is all the hard stuff is done. They're approved. This is just crossing T's and dotting I's and waiting for the government to the slow moving government to finalize this.
Are you saying that our government is inefficient?
Shocker.
How dare you? It's election season, Eric. How dare you? James, it's interesting. Eric said, there was a theory there that maybe one of these issuers didn't have their things in order and that was holding up the pack. Isn't it really unique that the pack is a relevant consideration here? I had Matt Siegel on from Van Eck. It must have been 2 weeks ago. And he was basically like, dude, they should just approve us first. We were first. What's this pack crap in the first place? Right? Like, why would we wait for one issuer who doesn't have their T's crossed and their I's dotted at this point? And why has it sort of become this all or nothing approach to approvals?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Matt for anything other than Bitcoin and Ethereum. Like, we've seen people apply and to get denied over and over and over again. And I'm not sure you should get some sort of advantage for like just happening to file at the right time when the SEC like loses a court case or what have you, because theoretically then ARK and 21 shares should have been first for Bitcoin. Right. We're in unique circumstances. Like, people were trying to launch a Bitcoin ETF for a decade. People have filed for an Ethereum ETF years and years ago, and they just kept getting denied. That said, he does have a point, right? Like, the whole point of those putting everyone in a pack is we don't want to pick favorites. We don't want to pick a winner like we did with the Bitcoin futures ETF for pro shares. Like, they went out a few days before anyone else, and they completely owned the market for a few years till spot came out, right? So the flip side of that is when you're doing this and allowing everyone to launch at once, and when everyone includes the likes of BlackRock and Fidelity, two of the largest asset managers of the world, yeah, you're not picking a winner in a way, but in a sense you are, because you're giving them the smaller issuers like the Van Eck, the 21 shares, the Bitwise of the world. They're not going to be able to compete with the likes of, with BlackRock and Fidelity, they're not going to. So I don't know. I kind of think if there was one issuer, the SEC should have just left them behind. Like, that's on them. I don't know if it's just a rumor. So I think they might have done that, but it doesn't seem like the SEC is in any rush. It seems like the Division of Corporate Finance, the one going through these documents, didn't really even know they were going to approve these Ethereum ETFs until like around when the SEC approved them. So they were just like, we haven't looked at this yet. We're in no rush. There's no deadline. There's no reason for them to rush. So
but let me push back. I get that, but the documents that were the people that got documents back, the comments back from the SEC and said, okay, submit these July 8th after the holiday, which was Monday. They said literally nothing.
Yeah.
So yes, they needed time. But I'm with you. They were caught flat-footed. You and I are both on the same page that this was political. There's no smoking gun, but all the circumstantial evidence is really good. But even with that flat-footedness, the first round is when they gave him like 6 or 7 comments. Those came back. It was this second round that was odd because the issuers were like, there's literally nothing and they don't need it for a week. And when they asked it to come back, they said fees aren't even necessary. So that to me seems like they were either occupied with something else during that little period. And they're just like, we can't deal with this right now. So we'll just basically punt for 2 weeks. Or there is one issuer that is, slowing everybody down. But according to the issuers and the people we speak with, these could have been done 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I mean, you even look at like CoinDesk's headline here on when this is going to happen, to your point of the confusion, Eric. What still needs to happen before spot Ether ETFs can trade? Okay, whatever. Spot Ether exchange traded funds may begin trading as soon as this Friday or in a few weeks. How big? It could be tomorrow or maybe 2027. It's fine, right? I mean, that's how that reads to me.
Yeah.
So clearly, this is a very different process. And
but can I say something here? Yeah. When somebody was like, here's Eric Balchunas in the year 2030. ETH ETFs could launch this Friday. And like, the people are dumping on me a little bit about, I think they're just impatient. The ETH crowd is like, it's finally our turn. And we're so excited. And it's like Christmas morning. And it's like Santa keeps like pushing it back. And they're like, oh my God, like how long do we have to wait for this? The Bitcoin people didn't have to wait. What would they waited?
They
11
waited.
years.
They waited a long time.
But it does feel like a little ETH middle child syndrome kicks in here. You know what I mean?
Redheaded stepchild. Yes.
Yeah. They're
yes.
like, if Bitcoin had a better launch,
fair,
it was 10 years like
of
Eric
Bitcoin.
was, you guys were more accurate. Why is everything messed up with our launch? They just want it out. I get it.
Well, the thing is, seemingly the SEC followed more of a defined, predictable process with Bitcoin, and the whole fire sale on approval. It's clear you can't make a prediction when the SEC has no idea what they're going to do at the same time. Yeah, it's like they're figuring it out as it goes, and I think that's very clear. But in the Bitcoin spot ETF lead up, because we had so much time, we had the marketing campaigns, we had the fee wars, we had so many things happening. Now, I mean, besides, maybe I'm wrong, I've only seen Van Eck say they would do 0 fees, at least up to a certain AUM. Have we seen any other battles here on fees? Is that a thing right now?
Yeah, Bitwise also threw in a fee waiver. Those are the only two that are out with a fee waiver announced, as far as I'm aware. Granted, I haven't gone through all of these S1 filings, so that might not be the case. But yeah, it's out there. It's just not as aggressive. Bitwise does have those commercials out on Ethereum, so Bitwise is doing it. I think Van Eck is coming out with a commercial as well. But it's just, you're right. It's not the same level of hype lead up.
So we have 3 fees. The waivers. I don't really get excited. That's like free steak knives kind of stuff. Okay, fine, it's nice, but the base fee is what you pay over years and decades. It's the most important thing, the expense ratio. I think we have Franklin came in at 19, which is pretty low. 19 bips.
That's a hell of a low bar. A bar.
Van Eck is 20, and we have Invesco at 25.
So like it's the same as their Bitcoin ETFs.
It's going to be very similar. Now,
the question then becomes Grayscale, right? Are they going to literally have the SAC to go 1.5 again?
Yeah. So Grayscale's spinoff, which is the mini-me ETH, there was something in a document on the Bitcoin one that they were going to charge. Was it 15 or 10? 15.
15. I think 15. It was 15.
So if the mini-me Grayscale is 15, that's interesting. What's BlackRock going to come in at? My guess is 25 or 20. And as long as you're within earshot of BlackRock, you have a fighting chance. You kill that variable. You can't be much more above BlackRock. But ETH, if you're 10 below BlackRock, once you get 7-8 basis points below, like a leader like BlackRock, you can then say we're the cheap ones. 1 basis point harder to do that. People can see through that. But if ETH is 15, that's interesting, and that would obviously be a way to maybe stop this dump of ETHE when they first launched, that we have a GBTC, which would be better for things, because I don't think you'll see the organic interest in the new 8 or the new 7 to offset that dump. But if ETH mini-me can absorb what would have been a dump, that's hugely helpful for the cause.
So they'll be launching the ETH mini-me outright. Is that the theory here? I mean, look, I'm looking at
the spinoff. It's like a spinoff.
Yeah, I'm looking at ETH. 8.89 billion market cap. That was almost 11 when the market was sort of at its peak a couple months ago. So obviously that's not a result of outflows for people. That's just because Ethereum is priced lower, right? And so that happens. But when GBTC was about 25 billion, I think, when the ETFs launched, 25, 26,
25 to 30, something like that.
Okay, so you're looking at 30-ish% of what of the Bitcoin situation was in a much less liquid market. So if they did come in at a 1.5% or something, and listen, ETH will sell off to some degree because there's people who are playing that discount trade. There's other reasons besides fees. But if this sold off proportionally the same, I think it would have a much more immediate downward effect on the price of ETH. Temporary again, but immediate and bigger, because it's just a much lower liquid, lower volume market.
Well, the other side of that is, yes, I agree, there's going to be some selling, but we don't have like a whole bunch of massive bankruptcy with like billions and billions of dollars locked up that they need to get cash out, right? Like I don't know. There's probably some bankruptcy that has ETH out there. I haven't seen any huge numbers, but the lockups of people that are forced to be in there is not the same as at the level that GBTC was.
Yeah, FTX like outright sold $1 billion, forced selling of GBTC like day one, right? And that 3 days later, we were like, oh, that made sense. So you're right. I didn't think about that part.
And ETH, the mini trust, like it's looking like it's going to launch essentially right after these things are actually launched. So we don't know exactly when. They haven't declared the date, but it seems like it's very possible that ETH launches before the mini Bitcoin trust launches, BTC, depending on when all this goes down.
And so listen, outside of ETH, and maybe we could circle back at that at the end, but Eric, you had some great takes on the Bitcoin spot ETFs that I do want to discuss while I have you guys. We've had some pretty monster inflows actually the last 2 days, even in the midst of this sort of downturn. But as you said here, a pretty good day for IBIT is more than the majority of ETFs launched this year will have in total AUM at the end of the year. Right? I love this. That's how Looney Tunes these numbers are and why skeptics.
There's going to be 600 ETFs launched, and over half of them will have like less than 50 million. I could have said more than 70%. Like only about 30% will have over 120 million of the 600 launched this year. Something like that. That's ballpark estimate. And that's just one day.
Yeah. I mean, it's absurd. And then you had this, which is really telling. Bitcoin had 20% drawdown in a month, flat, pretty nasty. I would have been impressed if 90% of AUM hung in there, but it was over 100% as they saw inflows. The boomers hung tough, even tougher than I predicted, and kept the all-important year-to-date numbers of 15 billion inflows. Hanging tough during drawdowns is as or more important than inflows during rallies for long-term net assets. Just ask Vanguard. I like that shot at Vanguard at the end, who won't obviously allow the trading of these. But when you're still seeing net inflows and price goes from 74,000 to 54,000, that means those people are more diamond-handed than us.
Yeah, look, this is so underrated. I've been trying to make this case about ETF investors for 20 years because sometimes the media will call them dumb money, mom and pop, and all this stuff. And I'm like, these are the smartest people. Why? They found the ETF. Most people get sold shit from their broker because they get kickbacks from crap funds. Jeez. That's the way this industry's worked. ETFs don't have kickbacks. So you have to kind of make your way through the sludge and the intermediaries to be like, wow, this ETF is a great deal. It's cheap, it's easy, it's tax efficient. So you have to have a brain that knows that's the best deal. So the type of person that would invest in an ETF or use an advisor that uses ETF is pretty with it. And I really try to push back on this theory that they're dumb or they're like the GameStop retail or just some like random person. Now I call them boomers. They're obviously all ages, but the majority of money in America is owned by the boomers. So the odds are it is a boomer. The other thing is, I think for the crypto crowd, anyone who isn't them is a boomer. I mean, like my kid calls me a boomer.
47. I've been a boomer for like 15 years around here.
Yeah. So I sort of say boomer as like TradFi client type, right? And what was impressive about that drawdown, 20% is no joke, even though Cliff Asness said it's not that big of a deal for Bitcoin. But I'm like, it is a big deal for a stock and bond person. And 20% in a month is pretty nasty. And yes, there were some weeks and days of outflows. But even if we didn't take the last 3 days or 4 days where there was a nice uplift, it's still it's like flat or down a little. So what that tells me is what percent of people hung in there during the worst of the drawdown. Well, it's 110% because it actually took in money. But let's cut out the last week when it was good, and it's still something like 97%. So the fact that 97% of the assets hung in there net is remarkable. I would have thought 90, 93, and I would have said that's pretty good. But there's people out there, I won't name names, they act like 50% of the people are going to leave in the first drawdown, and clearly it hasn't happened. And I wish some of these people would just take the L occasionally and be like, you know what, I was wrong. They really hung in there. But they double down. And like I said earlier, it's like arguing with a flat earther. Like, I don't know what to do. I just showed you a globe. I got you all this data. And like, no, the earth is flat. Okay, I don't know what to tell you. So I don't even engage.
I have a friend's brother who's a hardcore flat earther. And man, there's not like, I like to have a couple drinks and just go deep down the rabbit hole with it. And there's just no convincing. I mean, but this is crypto, man. You know, like if your prediction is Bitcoin's bottom is going to be 10,000, you're still predicting that Bitcoin's bottom is going to be 10,000, right? Even when we make new highs. People do not like to admit they're wrong, especially in this industry. But I love the perspective there on just how big these Bitcoin spot ETFs are, which leads us obviously to the question of what we'll expect when we come around to ETH. Galaxy actually had an amazing research report. I don't know if you guys saw this, but sizing the market for the Ethereum ETF, very much in line with what Matt Hogan had come on and shared from Bitwise. I mean, at the most basic level, some of these products trade elsewhere. So you have some precedent for what it would look like where there are Bitcoin and Ethereum products. You know the market cap of Ethereum versus Bitcoin. You know the volumes, right? So in your minds, what are we expecting? I mean, we had, I think it was 15 billion in 18 months was Matt Hogan's sort of big prediction. I mean, what do you guys think?
You want me to go first, Eric? I mean, Eric and I actually disagree a little bit on this. Eric's lower than I am. So like you said, ETH is like 30% the size of Bitcoin. I read the Galaxy report. I've talked to Matt about their report. I do agree with Matt on one thing. I think it's going to be a slower burn. With the Bitcoin ETFs, it was like all up front. Like everyone was just piling in. There was so much like pent up demand. I don't think we're going to see the same level of immediate immense demand for Ethereum. So if you look at Ethereum, it's 30% of the market. I think my base case is these things over like the first year are going to take in 20% of whatever the Bitcoin ETFs do, maybe a little more. But I think there's going to be a bit of a discount for a few reasons. One, you can't get staking. So the only people that are going to use these are people who literally can't access Ethereum directly, because that's almost like it's like a 3% fee tacked onto the fund because you're underperforming. Yeah, it could be
5
more.
or 6.
So if you can access Ethereum directly, you probably would. So that leaves people like with, I don't know, IRAs and different things, 401ks. You lose a little bit less of the utility of Bitcoin by putting it in an ETF wrapper than you do Ethereum, in my view. And also, I just don't see the same level of excitement when I talk to RAAs and advisors and different people in the traditional financial world that I saw with Bitcoin. There's just not as much, I don't know, it's not as simple to understand as digital gold. There's a lot of it's a little more complicated to talk about Ethereum. I do think when people start diving into the fact that there's revenues here, there's underlying money being made in the way that the L2s are operating and L1 and things like that, I think that'll get more TradFi people on board, but I think that'll take time and education. So yeah, on my number's 20%. I think they'll take in over 3 billion in the equivalent amount of time that Bitcoin ETFs have taken in 15. And again, as you said, that money coming in, we talk about money going out. Theoretically, Ethereum's a little bit smaller. It doesn't trade as much. $1 coming into an Ethereum ETF should be a little bit more impactful than $1 going into a Bitcoin ETF.
Yeah, so maybe a bigger, depending on what ETH does, maybe a bigger proportional drop at the beginning, but then a bigger move to the upside when that selling pressure is reduced. I mean, Eric, maybe we should frame it in terms of rails. Like, what would be a disappointment and what would be a wild success? And I guess what's the gap in between?
Yeah, I would say under $1 billion or $2 billion in the first year would be pretty disappointing, given Bitcoin is at 15 billion in 6 months. Bitcoin, by the way, that the boomers holding on during that drawdown is very good, because in a rally, the flow should heat up. So Bitcoin, our estimate was 12 to 15 billion in the first year, and they're already at the upper band of that. And the way they survive this rally makes me think that we're going to be very wrong. Like, it's probably going to be like 25. So let's say Bitcoin's 25. I would say Ether under 5 is going to feel like a letdown. So in other words, if Ether is less than 10% of Bitcoin, whatever Bitcoin is at after a year, if Ether is 10% or less, it's a letdown. If it's over 25%, I think it exceeds expectations. Let me ask you, Scott, are you like Bitcoin maxi, or are you open to them all?
I've been banned from the Bitcoin maxi.
Okay, so you're okay, but you're not okay. You're not.
The high priests have decided that I have talked about ETH on my show and therefore do not qualify for Bitcoin.
I don't know the terrain that well, so forgive me for being naive.
Fair.
Here's my question.
Actually, they're putting me to death in 6 months if I don't repent.
You know, with Ether, is it really decentralized?
No. I mean, so listen, decentralization, if that's the question, I think is not black or white, and it's always a grayscale. no pun intended. There's gray in between, but even Bitcoin, I've had guests on who's dove into Bitcoin mining and said, look, you've got like 4 people that control the entire Bitcoin network. So is that decentralized? And then there's the whole, like, everyone's on an Amazon web server anyways. So, how decentralized really is your decentralized protocol? So I think it's a very hard question.
I was having trouble trying to understand ETH. I read up on it, and one thing that was interesting to me was that these 3 companies, 2 or 3 tech companies own the majority of the internet. And I think the way regular people are skeptical of the government and the political expediency of printing money and want protection of that, which Bitcoin can solve, I feel as though the one thing that a normal person definitely has worries over is 2 tech companies controlling the internet. And if ETH is sort of a way to build a decentralized version of the web or something like that, so that these 2 or 3 tech companies can't control everything, and there's been cases where they just shut people down, I think that's an opening I can see. And then you got to say, well, ETH is the gasoline or the oil that allows that decentralized internet. But to me, that's the best, simplest marketing that I've heard for me personally as a normal person, but I haven't heard that much in the marketing. I hear people say, we're just going to sell it as like a tech stock. I'm like, well, you still have to sell me on NVIDIA. Like, okay, it does AI. It's got the CEO. Like, I know some things about it. You can't just say it's a tech stock. So I do worry, or I think a challenge will be how to position what Ether is solving. What problem is it solving? Bitcoin clearly is solving a problem of a devalued dollar and political expediency to keep that going. I don't know what ETH, they're not saying what it solves. They might say what it does, but what does it solve?
Yeah, it could ride on hype of like new tech platform, decentralization, whether true or not, will be a catchphrase that's used, and your average person isn't going to question it. So the answer is, in the mainstream, it will be accepted that it is a decentralized platform, or far more decentralized than these tech companies you talked about. I think the pitch, and this is what I talked to Matt Hogan both privately and publicly about, and others, I think the easy pitch for ETH is going to be diversification of, now you diversified into Bitcoin from your portfolio. Now you can get some diversification in crypto. And here's what it does for your Sharpe ratio on a 10-year basis. Like, the very easy, you don't need to understand what it does, dude. Just understand that it helps your portfolio. I think that's going to be the first pitch.
If that's how they sell it, I think it will be the silver to gold. And silver has 11% of the assets that gold does. But I think there's more potential if you can tap into the worry and fear that people have in a similar way that Bitcoin taps into their worries about their dollars getting devalued every year. And the government, everybody can understand that. Even people who are pro-government can, I think, relate to that. So anyway, just my 2 cents on that, which is an important part of this calculus, is how it's pitched.
I know we're slightly over time. James, you have 2 more minutes to give your sort of opinion on how it'll be pitched there. And Eric, if you got to go, I know you're out of here today, so let me know.
I actually pretty much agree with everything Eric said. I think the fact that it has underlying revenues, which I kind of hinted at before, is kind of how you can talk to these people as though it's similar to a tech stock. It's like a tech play. Whereas like Bitcoin, the miners get all the revenue there when they're, well, it's not really revenue, but we don't need to get into that. But essentially there is underlying cash flows that you could look at with Ethereum, with L2s, and you could see things that they're being used for. So I think talking about like the decentralized nature of that, and the fact that it's like a decentralized financial play and you can like make money off of this by staking your Ethereum, that makes the most sense to me as like why it's a good investment case. And like, you can talk the stuff you were talking about, Sharpe ratio, the stuff that it does, if you add like just Bitcoin or just Ethereum to your portfolio, but adding both of them and like a slug 5%, 10%, what have you, it drastically increases your Sharpe ratio than just one of them. So I think all of those reasons are going to be things that they're used to like pitch to advisors. But I'm with Eric there. It's just not as clean of digital gold, digital store of value. And that's literally 2 words or 3 words, and it gets the point across for the most part. So I think it's going to be a little bit harder, which is also why I said, I think it's going to be a bit of a slow burn. I don't think it's going to be as explosive on the launch as the Bitcoin ETFs.
I agree. And the market's just lower. Right. I mean, it's just kind of a depressed time in the market. So if they launch into this market, that'll have a huge part. Eric, James, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I know we ran you a couple minutes over time. Guys, you can follow both of them. They're tagged right down below on X. Always the go-to place. Appreciate you guys showing up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Bye.
Forgot my pink shirt. I'm so mad. So Chris, unfortunately, Chris Inc., Texas West Capital, affected by the hurricane Beryl coming through Texas. I think he still has no power and no internet, so he will not be here on the tail end, unfortunately. So we're going to pretty much end it here. I did want to remind you guys, of course, you'll see it tagged right down below, the roundtable, right? I told you guys I can't respond to your comments on YouTube. Very hard, almost impossible to respond on X. There's a link right down in the description on the YouTube that takes you to the roundtable, takes you specifically to this post where I can engage and you guys can comment and I can actually respond and talk to you guys. It's very small now, but believing in it very much long-term. And so hoping that we can get some traction there, get it going. So I encourage you guys to use that. Otherwise, that's all we got for today. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Peace out.
That's dope.